beneath the stars of the Iranian Plateau. Night settles over the Iranian Plateau and the air grows still. You lie upon the stony ground, the scent of sage and dust rising from the steppe. Overhead, the heavens shimmer a cold sea of constellations, ancient and vast. In this landscape between rugged mountains and desert wind, the roots of one of humanity's oldest faiths begin to stir. It is a time before empires, before temples of marble and fire. Around you, tribes of the early Aryans wander with their flocks, speaking to gods of sky and storm, sacrifice and survival. Their world is full of spirits, some kind, others cruel, and life itself feels like a fragile spark caught between both. In these ages, religion is not yet a system but a breath. The Aryan peoples who roam this land sing hymns to fire and water, to wind and earth. They call upon Mithra for light, Anahita for rivers, and Indra for the thunderbolt. Their world is alive with unseen forces, a great circle of offerings and gratitude. But beneath this diversity, something restless grows, a search for deeper meaning, for order behind chaos, for justice in a world where the wicked often prosper and the innocent suffer. It is in this restless search that a single man, born perhaps between 1500 and 1000 BCE, though some say later, begins to ask questions that unsettle the old ways. He is called Zarathustra, though the Greeks will later name him Zoroaster. His people live in what will one day be called Persia, the land of the sunrise. He is no king or warrior, but a seeker, one who listens more than he speaks. The fires that others offer to many gods he watches quietly, not for their smoke, but for the light that flickers inside them. You can imagine him as a youth walking beside the river Oxus, the waters shining in the dawn. He looks into the reflection and wonders, if there are many gods, why is there one sun? If the divine is truly good, why does evil persist? Perhaps he thinks there is not a crowd of jealous spirits, but one great source, the origin of all light and truth. Zarathustra lives among a people who sacrifice animals to win favor from unseen beings, yet his heart turns away from blood. He begins to speak of a new vision of a single creator, Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, who made the heavens and earth, the fire and the water, and who desires not offerings of flesh, but purity of thought and deed. His words are strange to his neighbors. Some call him mad, others blasphemous. But a few listen, and in the silence between the mountains, a new idea takes root. One dawn, as he prays by the river, he receives what he calls a revelation. The light itself speaks to him. It tells him that the world is a battleground between two forces, Ahura Mazda, who is good and truthful, and Ahriman, or Ahriman, who is deceitful and destructive. Humanity, he learns, stands in the middle of this eternal conflict. Every choice, every thought, word, and action helps one side or the other. There is no neutrality, no escape. The world is moral, the soul is accountable. You sit quietly in that revelation, feeling the simplicity of its power. Gone is the fear of countless spirits, gone is the confusion of blind fate. There is one good God, one evil spirit, and one great choice to serve light or darkness. In this clarity, the world becomes sacred, not chaotic. Each moment becomes a chance to align yourself with truth. Zarathustra's teachings spread slowly. He composes hymns, the Gathas, which speak of devotion, justice, and purity. He speaks of the Amesha Spentas, the bounteous immortals' divine attributes or emanations of Ahura Mazda. They are not separate gods, but reflections of his perfection. Vohu Mana, the good mind, Asha the truth, Almighty devotion, Kshathra, righteous dominion, Horvatat wholeness, and Ameritat immortality. Together they form a divine family of virtues that guide humanity toward righteousness. You hear their names whispered in the wind, not as distant beings but as principles to live by, to think with a good mind, to act with truth, to serve with devotion. This is how the human soul participates in the cosmic struggle for light. As his followers grow, so too does resistance. The priests of the old gods call him a heretic. Warriors of tradition drive him from his homeland, but he endures traveling across the plains preaching to shepherds and kings alike. Finally, a ruler named Vishtaspa, perhaps a real historical king, perhaps a figure sanctified by legend, hears his message and is moved. With royal patronage, Zoroastrianism becomes not merely a faith of wanderers, but a religion of nations. You can feel the fire rising, now the heart of the story glowing brighter. From that single prophet's vision will come a tradition that outlasts kingdoms, influences empires, and shapes the very ideas of heaven and hell. The great Persian dynasties, Achaemenids, Parthians, and Sassanids, will carry its flame as a symbol of their divine right to rule. Even as time transforms the faith, the essence remains the world as moral battlefield, the soul as a warrior of light. The wind of the plateau sighs through the rocks. The stars shimmer above their ancient light, a promise of eternity. You close your eyes, hearing Zarathustra's voice cross millennia. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. The night is long, but the flame endures. The prophet who spoke with fire. The desert air glows pale before dawn. A thin mist curls over the horizon, and the earth itself seems to wait in silence. You are standing beside Zarathustra, the prophet whose thoughts burn brighter than the morning star. Around him the world is still bound to old rituals, sacrifices to many gods' prayers for rain, cattle, victory. Yet within him another fire has been lit, one not of the hearth, but of vision. He has seen the radiance of Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, whose light reveals not only what is, but what must be. Zarathustra walks between villages that still cling to the ancient pantheon. He watches as priests call upon gods of thunder and fertility, their chants echoing through the valleys. He listens, but does not join. When he speaks, his voice is calm, even gentle, but it carries a new gravity. He tells the people that the true offering to the divine is not blood or smoke, it is the purity of one's mind, the honesty of one's word, the goodness of one's act. Each thought, he says, is a spark in the eternal struggle between truth and the lie. The people find this unsettling. They ask him, "Who is this Ahura Mazda you speak of, if not the lord of one thing or another? Is he god of the sun, of rain, of fire?" Zarathustra smiles faintly and answers, "He is the source of all that is good. He is not the fire, but the light within it. As days pass, his message deepens. The world, he explains, is not divided by chance, but by moral choice. Ahura Mazda created all things in truth and order, Asha, but Ahriman, the evil spirit, perverted creation with deceit, decay, and violence. Humanity was given freedom to choose between them. This freedom is both gift and test. To live rightly is to strengthen Ahura Mazda's creation. To lie or harm is to feed the darkness. The war between light and shadow is not fought in the heavens, but within every soul. You can almost hear the quiet rhythm of his words as he teaches good thoughts, good words, good deeds. They are simple, but carry immense weight. He does not command obedience, he invites understanding. Each act of kindness, every truth spoken, every honest intention, these, he says, are the weapons of the righteous. The struggle of the cosmos is not one of gods clashing, but of humans choosing. Yet his ideas are dangerous. In a world built upon the authority of priests and the fear of countless deities, his call to reason and moral clarity threatens the order of things. The Magi, the old priestly caste, accuse him of blasphemy. They say his visions are illusions sent by demons. They mock his claim that the universe is guided by a single, benevolent mind. They cling to their rituals of sacrifice and smoke their altars, heavy with offerings to many gods. Still, Zarathustra refuses to yield. He travels alone, sometimes hungry, sometimes pursued, yet his faith never falters. In his solitude, he finds deeper truths. He begins to speak of the unseen helpers of Ahura Mazda, the Amesha Spentas, not gods, but reflections of divine attributes: good mind, truth, devotion, dominion, wholeness, immortality. They are the virtues by which the world is kept in balance. To serve them is to live in harmony with the sacred order. The people begin to understand him not through fear, but through quiet recognition. They see that his teachings bring peace to the heart. They feel the warmth of his words, the serenity in his gaze. Some begin to follow him not as a god, but as a guide. His disciples learn to tend the sacred flame, not to worship it, but to protect it as a symbol of eternal truth. Wherever the flame burns, deception and darkness cannot prevail. One evening you imagine sitting among his followers in a small clearing beneath the stars. The night air hums softly, and in the center burns a steady fire. Its light casts long shadows, but its warmth is pure. Zarathustra's voice drifts through the stillness. Ahura Mazda created the fire as a reflection of his own light. Keep it pure, for its brightness is the eye of truth. Around you, faces glow in quiet awe. The flame flickers, and for a moment it feels as though the very world is breathing with it. In time, Zarathustra's message reaches the ears of a king, Vishtaspa, ruler of a distant region. The king, intrigued by the prophet's words, summons him to his court. There, before nobles and priests, Zarathustra speaks not of conquest or sacrifice, but of righteousness. He tells the king that true power is measured by justice, not fear. That a ruler's greatness lies in upholding the truth, not in commanding obedience. The court listens, divided, some moved, others enraged. Yet Vishtaspa feels something stir in his heart. He declares his faith in Ahura Mazda and commands that the new teaching be honored across his land. With royal favor, Zoroastrianism takes root. Fire temples are built, prayers are standardized, and the hymns of Zarathustra, the Gathas, are preserved. For the first time, a religion founded upon moral choice and a single divine truth becomes the faith of an empire. As the years pass, the prophet grows old, his beard white as the morning snow. But his eyes still carry the same light. He knows his work will outlive him, that empires will rise and fall, while his message endures that the world is a struggle between light and darkness, and that every soul has the power to choose which side it serves. You stand beside him as he watches the sunrise one last time. The desert glows golden, and the air trembles with heat. He whispers, "The truth is not in the sky or in the fire. It is in the choice you make when the world grows dark." The wind carries his words far across the plains, through centuries and kingdoms, into the hearts of those who will remember. The prophet who spoke with fire fades into the light. The wise lord and the shadow of Ahriman. The wind drifts through the high valleys of ancient Persia, carrying with it the scent of dust and fire. You follow the echo of Zarathustra's words, and as you walk through the vastness of his world, you begin to understand what he taught, not merely as a belief but as a vision of the universe itself. In his revelation, all creation is alive with purpose. The stars you gaze upon at night are not silent embers, but witnesses to an eternal struggle between two mighty spirits, Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, and Angra Mainyu, the hostile spirit, Ahriman, the deceiver. In the beginning, Zarathustra says there was only the realm of light, the domain of Ahura Mazda. His essence was pure truth, radiant wisdom and love. From this brilliance came the order of the cosmos, the heavens, the waters, the earth, the sacred fire, the plants, the animals, and finally humankind endowed with reason and the power to choose. But from beyond this radiance in the deep abyss, another presence stirred. It was darkness without end, chaos without shape. From that void arose Ahriman, born of his own ignorance, his heart filled with envy and wrath. Ahura Mazda, foreseeing this evil, did not destroy it outright, for the universe could only find meaning through the contest between good and evil, light and shadow. So began the great cosmic struggle, a battle not of swords, but of essence, of truth against falsehood. To sustain creation, Ahura Mazda spoke the first sacred word, Asha, meaning order, truth, and righteousness. Asha became the law of the universe, the pattern by which all things good are aligned. Against it rose Drujidalai, the principle of deception, corruption, and decay. You imagine this struggle unfolding not far away, but within the fibers of your own being. The world of Zoroaster is not a battlefield of gods distant from humanity. It is the very fabric of daily life. When one speaks truth, the light strengthens. When one deceives, the darkness deepens. Each soul becomes a soldier in the unseen war. The Amesha, Spentas, the bounteous immortals, serve as Ahura Mazda's companions and manifestations. They are the divine reflections of his perfection, sustaining the seven creations. Vohu Mana, the good mind, guides the thoughts of the faithful. Asha Vahishta, the highest, truth guards fire and justice. Kshathra Vairya, the desirable. Dominion watches over metals and rightful power. Almighty, the spirit of devotion, nurtures the earth. Haurvatat, wholeness, protects the waters. And Ameritat, immortality, grants life everlasting to all that is good. To each virtue, Ahriman sends his opposite, the Daivas, demons of corruption. Where truth reigns, they sow deceit. Where devotion blooms, they whisper despair. You sense how ancient minds once saw these forces at work in every storm, every sickness, every lie. Life itself became a mirror of the divine war, not hopeless but meaningful. Humanity's task was to join the ranks of Ahura Mazda's creation, to preserve the purity of light by living rightly, by protecting what is sacred. Fire in this world holds special significance. It is not worshipped as a god, but revered as a symbol of divine truth. It burns without falsehood. It illuminates, but does not deceive. To tend the fire is to align oneself with Asha, to keep chaos at bay. In Zoroastrian temples, the sacred flame is fed with sandalwood and kept pure, never extinguished. Its light represents Ahura Mazda's eternal presence in a world of uncertainty. Even today, in distant corners of Iran and India, this fire still burns its lineage, stretching back to the dawn of belief. You begin to understand why Zoroastrianism's ideas echoed so far beyond Persia. Its dual vision of good and evil, of judgment and salvation, of a final triumph of light, these would shape the theologies of future ages. Long before the birth of Christianity or Islam, Zoroastrian priests spoke of heaven and hell, of angels and demons, of resurrection and the end of days. The religion's influence seeped quietly through time, weaving itself into the very language of faith across continents. Yet for the early followers of Zarathustra, these were not abstract notions. They lived as farmers and herders under an open sky, their lives bound to the rhythm of land and season. Each sunrise was a reminder of Ahura Mazda's promise, each nightfall a test of courage. They kept their homes clean, their hearts honest, and their words true. Purity was both a spiritual and physical duty. Water, fire, and earth were sacred, not to be polluted, not to be defiled by death or waste. To harm creation was to aid the lie, and so when someone died, their bodies were not buried or burned, for both would taint the sacred elements. Instead, the Zoroastrians carried their dead to high towers, silent circular stone structures open to the sky, where the body could return to nature without corruption. Later generations would call these places the Towers of Silence, but to the faithful they were gateways of release, where the body met the sky and the soul began its journey to the bridge of judgment. In that belief lies one of the oldest visions of cosmic justice. After death, the soul waits 3 days hovering near the body as its deeds are weighed. Then it travels to the Chinvat Bridge, the narrow span between the world of the living and the realm of truth. There, a maiden appears beautiful or terrifying depending on the soul's life. To the righteous, she is radiant and welcoming, guiding them across into paradise. To the wicked, she is twisted and cold, and the bridge narrows until they fall into the abyss of darkness. You can almost feel the weight of that bridge beneath your feet, the trembling line between salvation and ruin. Yet even the dark is not eternal. Zoroastrianism holds a final hope that in the end of all things, when time reaches its last turning, Ahura Mazda will triumph. All souls will be purified in a river of molten metal, a searing flood that will burn away the evil within and leave only light. Even the damned will emerge, cleansed, reborn into a perfected world. It is a vision both stern and merciful, where justice and compassion meet. You sense that in this faith, the heart of humanity's moral struggle is laid bare, the certainty that good matters, that evil can be undone, that every act, however small, contributes to the destiny of creation. The stars above the plateau flicker, and for a moment you can almost imagine them as sparks from the eternal fire. Fragments of Ahura Mazda's light scattered across the endless night. The universe breathes balanced between shadow and flame, waiting for the dawn. Good thoughts, good word, good deed. The sun rises gently over the Persian plains, washing the hills in a quiet gold. The first light catches the sacred fires burning in distant temples, their flames trembling like living souls. You watch as men and women step forward, bowing their heads, whispering words taught to them since childhood, a simple creed that holds the weight of eternity. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. To the Zoroastrians, these words are not merely a moral code, but the heartbeat of creation. Each thought that passes through the mind is a ripple upon the fabric of the universe. Every word spoken carries the power to heal or to wound. Every action builds or breaks the divine order. You sense that here morality is not an abstraction, not a set of commandments imposed by fear, but a living bond between the human soul and the cosmos itself. Zarathustra's revelation was not only that there is one supreme creator, Ahura Mazda, but that this creator entrusted humanity with a share of his light. To think rightly, to speak truthfully, and to act kindly are not small virtues. They are acts of cosmic alignment. They strengthen the forces of light against the creeping shadow of Ahriman, the spirit of the lie. Every moment, therefore, becomes sacred. To live consciously, ethically, is to take part in the great defense of creation. You imagine a young priest teaching a child beneath the morning sun. His voice is calm, his tone almost like a lullaby as he explains, "Your mind is a garden. If you plant good thoughts, you will harvest peace. If you plant deceit, darkness will grow." The child listens, eyes wide, repeating the words softly. Around them the temple's sacred flame flickers and the air hums faintly with incense and devotion. In the heart of this faith, purity is not a distant perfection, but a daily practice. The Zoroastrians believe that everything created by Ahura Mazda is pure water, fire, air, earth, the human body, and it is mankind's duty to preserve that purity. To pollute the rivers, to lie, to bring harm to an innocent creature, these acts are not simply wrong. They are betrayals of the cosmic order. The faithful wash before prayer, handle fire with reverence, and speak carefully, as if each word might echo through eternity. In the Avesta, the sacred scripture purity is not merely ritual, but ethical. The Vendidad, one of its great sections, outlines laws against impurity and corruption, not only of the body, but of the spirit. The faithful are taught to keep their surroundings clean, to treat animals kindly, to cultivate honesty in their dealings. The act of tending fire becomes a meditation, a steady reminder that light must be protected from darkness, that the truth must be guarded from decay. As the centuries unfold, the saying, "Good thoughts, good words, good deeds," becomes the soul of Zoroastrian identity. It shapes how families are raised, how justice is done, how kings rule. A ruler who embodies these virtues is said to have Kfarena, divine glory, a radiant blessing that confirms his right to lead. A man who lives in deceit loses that inner light. His fate, both in life and after death, grows dim. You imagine a Zoroastrian home at dusk. The family gathers before a small flame, the father reciting the prayers of the Ahunava, "As the wise Lord wills, so let it be." The mother teaches her children to recite the creed of the faith to keep their minds bright, their speech true, their hands clean. This is no grand ritual of power or fear, but a quiet harmony between the human and the divine. The room glows softly as though Ahura Mazda himself listens in approval. Beyond the family hearth, the greater world begins to reflect these ideals. When the Persian kings rise, Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, they carry with them this moral framework. Their inscriptions speak not of divine caprice, but of justice and truth. Darius the Great, in the famous Behistun inscription, declares, "By the favor of Ahura Mazda, I am king. I am not a friend to the lie. I am not hot-tempered. I rule with justice." His words echo Zarathustra's teaching that truth is the foundation of rightful power and deceit is the seed of ruin. Yet even as the faith gains political grandeur, its heart remains humble, the individual's choice between good and evil. No priest can cleanse another's sin. No king can purchase righteousness with wealth. Each person walks their own path toward light, guided by conscience and the wisdom of the wise Lord. Salvation is not granted by obedience alone, but earned through the deliberate cultivation of virtue. In moments of doubt or darkness, the faithful look to fire. They see in its pure, smokeless flame the very reflection of their moral purpose. Fire does not lie, it consumes what is impure and leaves only light behind. To gaze into it is to be reminded that within every human soul burns a similar spark, a fragment of Ahura Mazda's creation, longing to rise. The priests known as Magi tend these flames with quiet devotion. In the stillness of dawn they recite hymns from the Gatha's ancient verses, believed to have been composed by Zarathustra himself. The rhythm is slow, almost like breathing. Let the truth be spoken, let the world be renewed, let the heart be pure. The sound carries across the temple courtyards, mingling with the faint crackle of the sacred fire. Over time, these prayers become a kind of music that shapes the day. Farmers in the fields whisper blessings before tilling the soil. Travelers utter them before setting out. Soldiers murmur them before battle. Even those far from the temples carry a spark of the eternal flame in their hearts. You can almost feel it now, that quiet steadiness, that inner light. Zoroastrianism does not ask its followers to renounce the world, but to ennoble it. It does not demand suffering, but awareness. To live rightly is to walk in harmony with the sacred design of the universe. To act with deceit is to stumble into darkness. And so as night returns and the stars awaken once more, you hear the ancient whisper carried on the wind across Persia's plains. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. The message that once began in a prophet's solitude now burns in the hearts of a people, a moral flame that no empire can extinguish. The Amesha Spentas, guardians of creation. The night sky above ancient Persia glimmers like a field of jewels, every star a flicker of divine memory. You stand beneath it, feeling the quiet breath of the world move through the air. In the vastness of creation, Zoroastrianism teaches that there are no empty spaces. Everything that exists, from the smallest spark to the grandest mountain, has purpose. All is infused with the essence of Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, whose light flows outward in 7 divine emanations known as the Amesha Spentas, the bounteous immortals. They are the pillars of creation, the guardians of the world, and the reflections of God's perfect nature. To understand them is to understand the order of existence itself. For Ahura, Mazda is not a distant god who rules by whim. He is the heart of all goodness, whose perfection manifests as these 7 spiritual powers. Through them, the balance of the cosmos is maintained, and through them, humanity finds guidance. The Amesha Spentas are both divine beings and moral ideals, not worshipped separately, but honored as aspects of the one supreme light. First among them is Vohumana, the good mind. You imagine him as the whisper of wisdom within the soul, the calm, discerning voice that reminds you to choose rightly when the world tempts you toward darkness. He governs the realm of animals, reminding humans of their duty to care for living creatures. Through the good mind, a person perceives truth and compassion. When you pause before acting and listen to conscience, it is Vohumana's light that you feel. Then comes Ashavahishta, the best truth or righteousness. He is the guardian of fire, that pure living symbol of truth that illuminates the temples of Zoroastrian worship. Asha is the law of harmony that binds creation. He is justice, order, and cosmic balance. When the fire burns clean, it represents his perfect clarity. To live in accordance with Asha is to walk in truth, to uphold fairness, and to respect the natural order that Ahura Mazda established at the dawn of time. The third emanation, Kshatravirya, is the desirable dominion, the embodiment of divine sovereignty and rightful power. He governs the domain of metals which endure through fire, and time symbolizing strength, tempered by righteousness. Kshatra's dominion is not the tyranny of kings, but the moral authority that arises from integrity. To rule justly is to serve him. To wield power without cruelty is to reflect his light. Next is Armaiti, the holy devotion, feminine in spirit, patient and nurturing. She is the spirit of earth, and humility, the soft strength that sustains life. When one kneels in gratitude, when one honors the land and treats it with care, Armaiti is present. Her devotion is not passive, but enduring the quiet loyalty to good, even when the world grows cold. Through her, Zoroastrianism teaches reverence for the earth as sacred and for service as a form of holiness. Following her are Havatat and Ameritat, wholeness and immortality often spoken of as twin forces inseparable in purpose. Havatat guards the waters, symbolizing completion and health. When rivers flow pure and bodies thrive, her blessing is felt. Ameritat watches over plants and eternal life. Through her creation renews itself after decay. Together they promise the ultimate destiny of all beings, a final state of harmony where life is perfected and death undone. And above all stands Spenta, the Holy Spirit, not one of the six, but the force through which Ahura Mazda himself acts. He is the creative energy that gives life to all the others, the divine fire that moves through the fabric of reality. He is goodness in motion, the very breath of creation. You can feel their presence woven into the rhythm of the world, not as distant gods upon thrones, but as living principles that guide every heartbeat, every dawn. The Zoroastrians believed that when a person lived according to these virtues, they did not merely obey divine law, they joined in sustaining the cosmos itself. The Amesha Spentas were not content to rule the heavens. They worked through humanity to keep the world in balance. In temples and homes alike, their names were recited during prayer, not as pleas for favor, but as reminders of the divine attributes humans must strive to embody. A craftsman invoking Kshatra sought to temper skill with integrity. A mother blessing her children might call upon Almighty for patience and love. A farmer drawing water from a stream honored Havatat, keeping the source pure for all who shared it. You imagine a scene at dawn. Priests clad in white robes gather before the sacred fire. The youngest recites the hymn, "We praise Ahura Mazda," and the bounteous immortals who uphold righteousness, who protect creation, who guide the good mind. The air hums softly with the sound of devotion. As the prayer fades, the flames rise higher, casting light upon faces serene with faith. To these followers, worship is not submission but participation, a partnership between humanity and divinity in preserving truth. The idea is revolutionary for its time. In a world where gods often demand sacrifice or obedience, Zoroastrianism calls upon humans to cooperate with the divine. The Amesha Spentas offer not judgment, but example. Each represents an ideal the soul must cultivate to ascend toward perfection. Even the smallest act of honesty or compassion becomes cosmic in its significance. You can almost sense how this moral universe changes the shape of ancient thought. The world no longer feels ruled by chaos or chance. It becomes a moral structure designed by wisdom and sustained by goodness. Every drop of water, every flame, every breath of air becomes sacred, connected to the divine order. And yet the Zoroastrians are not blind to the shadow that lingers. For each of the bounteous immortals, Ahriman has created an opposite, a force of corruption that seeks to twist creation into falsehood. Against Vohu-Mana stands the evil mind spreading hatred and deceit. Against Asha comes the lie. Against Ameti rises arrogance, scorning devotion. It is a mirror war waged not in the heavens alone, but in the heart of every human being. When you look upon the sacred flame, you see it clearly now, the endless interplay of light and dark, of creation and corruption. But you also sense the quiet certainty that goodness is stronger, that the light burns longer. For Ahura, Mazda's essence is not mere power, but wisdom and love, qualities that cannot be destroyed, only momentarily obscured. The fire trembles softly in the night breeze. You feel warmth upon your face, and for a moment the vast universe feels close, alive, orderly and bright. The guardians of creation watch silently, their radiance woven into the stars, their virtues whispering through the breath of the world, the pure flame and the temple of light. Morning breaks over the highlands of Persia. The mountains gleam with the faint blush of dawn, and from the terraces of an ancient city, smoke rises in graceful curls. You walk among the people. As they gather, faces, washed garments clean their footsteps soft upon the stone. They are heading toward a place of deep stillness, a fire temple, where the sacred flame of Ahura Mazda burns without end. The air here carries a scent of purity, sandalwood air and ash. You enter the courtyard and see the flame flickering within its silver vessel, its light undimmed by time. To the followers of Zarathustra, this fire is no idol. It is not a god in itself, but a reflection, a mirror of truth. It represents the light of wisdom, the radiance of the divine mind that keeps creation alive. To gaze upon it is to remember the clarity of Asha, the order of all things. The priests, dressed in immaculate white, move silently around it. Their robes shimmer faintly in the glow, the hems bound tight to prevent even a single speck of impurity from falling into the fire. They wear a thin veil called a paitidana over the mouth and nose, not to hide their faces, but to protect the sacred flame from the defilement of their breath. Every motion, every gesture is deliberate. Reverence is woven into the rhythm of their bodies. At the temple's entrance, you pause and feel the subtle change in the air, the quiet hum that comes when devotion and discipline meet. A worshipper steps forward carrying a small bundle of dry wood purified through prayer. She bows her head, then gently places it beside the sacred flame. The priest accepts it, offers a silent blessing, and feeds it to the fire. The flame rises higher, its glow warm and steady. There are no statues here, no images of gods, only the living fire, the purest symbol of the divine presence. Zarathustra taught that Ahura Mazda's essence is light and wisdom, and that fire is his most visible reflection on earth. It was never meant to be worshipped as a deity, but honored as a link between the human and the divine. Fire reveals without deception. It transforms without corruption. To look upon it is to be reminded of truth, that goodness must be protected and impurity must be burned away. You listen as the priests chant softly from the Avesta. Their voices rise and fall in measured harmony, their cadence almost like breath itself. The words are ancient, carried across centuries, prayers to uphold the purity of the elements, to honor the truth, to resist the lie. The temple becomes a place where thought and sound merge, where the human voice joins the eternal flame. in song. Outside, the people wait quietly. There is no crowding, no shouting, only patience. One by one they enter the inner chamber, bowing low, whispering blessings for their families, their lands, their ancestors. Some bring offerings, not of wealth or blood, but of clean wood and fragrant incense. Others come with nothing but their hearts, and that too is enough. In Zoroastrian life, the temple is not a place of fear or supplication, but of reflection. There are no idols to please, no sacrifices to appease angry gods. Instead, there is the steady call to righteousness, the inner recognition that each person carries a spark of the sacred within them. To see the fire is to see oneself mirrored in divine light. You recall the three principles, again, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and realize that the temple is built upon these foundations. The flame, the prayers, the quiet discipline, they all serve to keep the mind clear and the spirit aligned with Ahura Mazda's creation. The fire temple is not just a building, it is the world made holy. There are many types of sacred flames. The simplest burns in homes tended by families each morning and evening. Greater flames, the Atash Adaran and Atash Behram, are established with elaborate rituals where fires from different sources are purified and united. One flame might come from a carpenter's hearth, another from a king's forge, another from a lightning strike. Each is cleansed through prayer until it becomes worthy of joining the eternal fire. When all are brought together, they form the perfect light, a harmony of humanity's daily life transformed into sacred energy. You imagine such a ceremony unfolding. Dozens of priests, their movements slow and reverent, carry vessels of flame through the night. They chant in unison as they approach the temple, their path lit only by the fire they bear. The air is filled with warmth and anticipation. At the final moment, the fires are joined, merging into one. The new flame leaps upward, bright and golden, and the gathered crowd exhales in wonder. It is a birth not of a god, but of unity, a reminder that all light comes from one source. This devotion to purity extends beyond ritual. To the Zoroastrians, keeping fire undefiled symbolizes keeping the soul unstained by falsehood. A single untruth, like a speck of ash, can cloud the flame of conscience. So they live with mindfulness, tending both the hearth and the heart. When a person sins, they seek to restore balance through confession, through right action, through renewed service to the truth. You step out into the sunlight again. The temple behind you glows faintly, its sacred fire still burning. The streets are alive with quiet joy, children carrying water in clay jars, merchants sweeping the thresholds of their shops, families preparing food. Everything feels deliberate, almost sacred, because in this world the line between the divine and the ordinary is thin. To cook, to speak, to work honestly, all are forms of worship. At dusk, the fires across the land begin to glow. In every home, in every temple, the faithful recite the ancient words, "As the wise Lord wills, so let it be. May truth prevail over the lie. May the flame of purity never die." You watch as the last light of the sun meets the rising flame sky and fire merging in one vast brightness. For a moment the world feels whole. You understand why the Zoroastrians call their temples Atashkadik, houses of fire, sanctuaries not of fear but of light. The night comes softly, but no darkness feels final. In every flicker of flame you see the reflection of the divine, unbroken, eternal, alive. and so the wise Lord's light endures, burning quietly in the hearts of those who guard it, the Fravashi and the soul's reflection. The desert night has fallen once more, quiet and endless, the horizon a sweep of silver starlight. You stand beneath the great vault of the heavens, and the air feels weightless, as if the world itself is holding its breath. To the Zoroastrians, this silence is not empty. It hums softly with presence, with unseen watchers who dwell between heaven and earth. Among these are the Fravashis, the guardian spirits of all creation, luminous beings that guide, protect, and remember. They are the reflections of perfection that each soul carries within the ideal self, untouched by the shadows of the world. Long before birth, long before the soul takes its first breath, the Fravashi exists in the realm of light. It stands beside Ahura Mazda, radiant and strong, a spark of divine will. When a person is born, their Fravashi descends with them, becoming both protector and conscience, unseen, yet always near. You imagine this spirit, silent, serene, watching as you move through life. It does not command or punish. It whispers. It urges you toward truth when the path darkens, toward kindness when anger tempts the heart. It is not the soul itself, but its higher twin, a divine echo that remembers what you truly are. Even when the soul falters, the Fravashi remains pure, waiting for the day when both will be reunited in light. In Zoroastrian belief, everything that exists, every person, every animal, every river, every flame has its Fravashi. The universe is thus mirrored in spirit, each form in the material world paired with its ideal essence in the unseen realm. When the forces of Ahriman bring chaos or corruption, it is the Fravashis who resist them, holding the structure of creation together. Without them, the world would fall into ruin. They are the quiet defenders of order, the keepers of Asha, the divine truth. You walk through the night, imagining the air alive with the millions upon millions of shining spirits, invisible yet close. They are the light behind every star, the whisper within every good thought. In the Avesta, the Fravashis are praised as the hosts of the righteous, who stand against the demon and guard the living. They are not merely guardians of individuals, but of creation itself, the wind that turns aside storms, the unseen strength that protects the innocent. When a person dies, their soul lingers for 3 nights near the body visited by the Fravashi. It comforts the departing spirit, reminding it of the path ahead. On the dawn of the 4th day, the soul journeys to the Chinvat bridge, where it will meet judgment. But the Fravashi does not leave. It remains in the realm of light eternal, and unsullied, a beacon waiting for the soul's return. At the end of time, when Ahura Mazda renews the world, the soul and its Fravashi will merge once more, perfected, whole, and eternal. In this teaching lies a profound tenderness. You realize that no person, no matter how lost or burdened, is ever entirely forsaken. There is always a fragment of light within them that cannot be stained. The Fravashi is that fragment, the divine promise that goodness is not only possible, but inherent. It is the quiet proof that humanity's nature at its core is aligned with the light of the wise Lord. Each year during the Fravadigan festival, the Zoroastrians honor these guardian spirits. For 10 days they believe the Fravashis return to visit the living. Homes are cleansed, lamps are lit, prayers are whispered. Families prepare food and offerings of flowers, incense, and pure water. It is a time of remembrance and gratitude when the barrier between the worlds grows thin. The living welcome their ancestral spirits home, not with fear, but with love. You picture a house glowing softly under the night sky, its courtyard lined with lamps. Inside, the air is fragrant with sandalwood. An elderly woman places fresh flowers beside a small flame, murmuring a prayer for her ancestors. "May the Fravashis of the righteous come to our home," she whispers. Her grandchildren sit nearby, listening, their eyes wide and curious. Outside, the desert wind passes gently through the garden, stirring the light of the lamps, as though unseen hands have brushed them. It is said that when the festival ends, the Fravashis depart in peace, carrying blessings for the year to come. But even then, they never truly leave. They are the pulse within creation, the unseen architecture of divine harmony. In times of despair, the faithful pray to them not as gods, but as allies in the eternal struggle against the lie. There is something deeply comforting in this vision of the world, that every creature has a guardian spirit, that every act of goodness is accompanied by unseen grace. The Zoroastrian does not see themselves as alone in their journey toward truth. They are part of a vast invisible fellowship stretching across all of creation. Every honest word strengthens that fellowship. Every cruel act weakens it. In this, the Fravashis are not only guides but reminders. They represent what humanity is meant to be: pure, wise, courageous. To listen to one's Fravashi is to remember one's divine origin. It is to act in harmony with the moral rhythm of the universe. When a person ignores that inner guidance, they drift into falsehood and chaos. But when they follow it, the soul becomes luminous like the sacred fire itself, steadfast, serene, incorruptible. You stand again beneath the stars, feeling the quiet immensity of this truth. The wind stirs your hair, the night air cool against your skin. Somewhere far away, a temple flame still burns its light mirrored in the heavens. Perhaps each star above you is the reflection of a Fravashi eternal souls shining across the void, calling their earthly twins home. You realize now that the teachings of Zarathustra were never meant to trap humanity in fear, but to awaken them to companionship, to remind them that they are never truly alone. Every act of goodness is echoed in heaven. Every kind thought strengthens the cosmic web. The world, even in its suffering, is held together by the invisible love of its guardians. As the night deepens, you close your eyes and sense your own Fravashi, quiet, patient, radiant, waiting like a beacon beyond the horizon of time. It does not speak in words, but you understand its message all the same. Walk toward the light. You were made of it. The bridge of judgment. The world around you has grown hushed, as though even the wind has chosen to listen. The fire in the temples burns low, and above the silent plains the night feels infinite. This is the hour when Zoroastrians believe the soul begins its journey, when life releases its final breath, and the spirit prepares to cross from the realm of the living to the world beyond. It is the moment when all that has been thought, spoken, and done is gathered into judgment, and the path to light or darkness is revealed. In Zoroastrian teaching, death is not the end. It is a passage, a crossing over the great threshold that separates the physical from the spiritual. When the body falls still, the soul lingers for 3 nights beside it. During that time, it contemplates its life, watching as its deeds take shape around it. The good actions shine with the brightness of fire, the evil ones cast long shadows. The air grows heavy with memory. Every word spoken, every kindness given or withheld, every truth told or twisted, all return, to stand before the soul like silent witnesses. The living, knowing this, tend to the departed with deep care. To preserve the sacred purity of the earth and fire, they do not bury or burn the body, for both would be defilement. Instead, they carry it to a high stone tower, a dakhma or tower of silence, where the body is laid upon the open platform exposed to the sky. There the natural world completes the final rite. Vultures descend swiftly, stripping away the flesh, so that nothing remains to pollute the elements. What seems grim to outsiders is in truth an act of profound reverence. The body returns to nature, leaving the earth untainted, the air unsullied, the sacred flame undisturbed. For 3 nights the family keeps a small fire burning in their home. They offer prayers and recite passages from the Avesta, calling upon the Fravashis to guide the soul on its way. The home fills with the faint, steady rhythm of prayer, the ancient cadence of hope and remembrance. Then at dawn on the 4th day, the soul rises. It turns toward the great beyond, toward the path of truth, and begins its journey to the Chinvat Bridge, the Bridge of Judgment. You imagine it now, a narrow, shining span stretching across the void between earth and heaven. It is said to be as fine as a hair and as sharp as a blade. On one side lies the world of the living. On the other, the realm of Ahura Mazda's light. Beneath it yawns the abyss of darkness where Ahriman's deceit still lingers. The bridge is not fixed, for its width depends on the life the soul has lived. For the righteous, it widens broad and easy to cross. For the deceitful, it narrows to a thread, trembling over the gulf. As the soul steps forward, it is met by 3 presences, the judges of the dead: Mithra, the guardian of contracts and truth; Sraosha, the divine messenger of conscience and obedience; and Rashnu, the angel of justice who holds the scales. Each examines the soul's deeds, weighing good against evil, truth against falsehood. But it is not punishment they seek, it is balance. The universe, they say, must be kept in harmony, and every soul must find its rightful place within that order. Then comes the most mysterious moment of all. Out of the dawn mist a figure appears, the soul's own deeds given form. To the righteous she appears as a maiden radiant and smiling, her perfume like spring blossoms. She greets the soul with gentle words: I am your good thoughts, your good words, your good deeds. You have made me beautiful. Together they walk across the bridge, passing easily into the realm of light, where Ahura Mazda's presence fills the sky. But for the wicked, the figure that emerges is a horror, dark, twisted, foul. I am your evil thoughts, your evil words, your evil deeds, she hisses. You have made me thus. When the soul trembles and steps upon the bridge, it feels it narrow beneath its feet. The light grows distant. The bridge wavers and the soul falls. It plunges into the abyss below, where the darkness of the lie reigns. Yet even here there is no eternal damnation. In the teachings of Zarathustra, hell is not endless punishment but purification. The wicked suffer not to appease an angry God, but to be cleansed of corruption. Their pain is real, yet it is also the beginning of transformation. For Ahura Mazda's ultimate desire is not vengeance but restoration. The universe itself is destined for renewal when even the shadow of Ahriman will be burned away in the final dawn.
You feel the weight of this vision settle softly upon you. Judgment here is not terror, but truth. It is the natural consequence of choice, the unfolding of moral order. Every thought, every act, every spoken word shapes the path across the bridge. The law of Asha is absolute but never cruel. It simply reflects what is.
In Zoroastrian funerary rites, the symbolism of this journey endures. The prayers recited over the departed speak not of fear, but of reunion. They tell of the soul's ascent to the realm of stars, then to the moon, and finally to the sun, where it joins the company of the righteous. There it dwells in light, awaiting the final restoration of creation. The body has returned to earth, but the soul continues its path toward purity. You can almost feel the stillness of that passage, the soul, standing upon the bridge, the vast silence around it, the weight of truth pressing gently against it like wind. And in that moment you understand why this ancient faith has no idols of punishment or despair. For in the end, Zoroastrianism is not about fear of divine wrath, but the certainty that light and goodness will prevail even for those who have fallen far from it.
As the imagined bridge fades from your mind, you are left with a single serene understanding. Every life, no matter how small, moves toward judgment not as an end, but as a reckoning of harmony. The bridge is not a threat, it is an invitation to walk in truth while there is still time. The stars above you shimmer faintly like the souls of the righteous crossing one by one. Somewhere in the darkness, the river of fire still burns, waiting to cleanse the world of its final shadow. And as the night deepens, the bridge of judgment stretches quietly between heaven and earth, a promise, a warning, and a light that never fades.
The Kingdom of Fire, Zoroastrianism and the Achaemenids. The wind moves softly through the valleys of ancient Persia, stirring the dust of empires yet unborn. You can almost hear the faint echo of marching feet, the ring of iron, and the hum of prayer. The vision of Zarathustra, once whispered beside lonely fires, has begun to shape the destiny of nations. The humble faith of purity and light now burns within the heart of the world's first great empire, the Achaemenid kingdom, born under the radiant symbol of Ahura Mazda. It begins with Cyrus the Great, a man who rises not only through conquest, but through wisdom and mercy. His empire stretches from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, binding together countless peoples and languages. Yet his rule, unlike so many others, is not carved solely by fear or the sword. It is shaped by a spiritual ideal that justice, truth, and respect for creation are divine obligations. The flame of Zoroaster's teaching burns within the Persian court, and the king himself speaks of Ahura Mazda as the source of his authority. You can almost see the royal palace of Pasargadae in the morning light, the walls glimmering with carved reliefs of winged figures, half-man, half-eagle symbols of divine protection. Above the king's head shines a circle of light, the Fravashi, representing the eternal soul guided by truth. Though Zoroastrianism has not yet hardened into formal institutions, its ideas have become the moral language of empire. When Cyrus frees the enslaved peoples of Babylon and restores their temples, he acts not merely as a conqueror, but as a servant of righteousness. His own proclamation, the famous Cyrus Cylinder, declares that the gods of many lands are to be honored and the people treated justly. Behind this tolerance lies the seed of Zoroaster's vision that truth is the light within all creation. After Cyrus comes Darius the Great, the empire's architect, and philosopher king. Under his reign, Zoroastrianism takes on its fullest royal form. In the mountain cliffs of Behistun, he inscribes his victories and his creed for all eternity. The massive stone carving shows Darius standing before the bound figures of rebels, his hand raised toward a symbol of light, Ahura Mazda, shining above him. The words beside it proclaim, by the favor of Ahura Mazda, I am king. I am a friend of truth. I am not a friend of the lie. You imagine him there, chisel in hand, commanding his scribes to carve each word as sacred oath. It is not merely a royal boast, it is a declaration of moral order. For Darius, kingship itself is an act of devotion to rule justly, to protect the weak, to punish deceit. Beneath his authority lies the spiritual architecture of Zoroastrian thought that the universe is divided between light and shadow, and the ruler's duty is to keep the realm aligned with Asher, the truth. In the royal city of Persepolis, temples rise beside palaces and sacred fires burn in marble chambers. The priests, the magi, attend these flames, their white garments bright against the polished stone. They chant hymns to the wise Lord, bless the waters and the land, and oversee the rituals that sanctify royal power. Yet their faith is not closed to others. The empire's reach is vast, its people diverse. Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, and Jews dwell under the same sun. Zoroastrianism becomes the quiet spirit of unity binding the empire through shared moral ideals rather than forced belief. You walk through the grand audience hall, the Apadana, where Darius and his son Xerxes receive emissaries from every corner of the known world. You can almost hear the murmur of 100 tongues and see the gifts brought from distant lands, ivory spices, silk gold. Yet in the carvings that line the walls, every figure from the Persian noble to the Ethiopian envoy stands equal before the king. This, too, reflects the Zoroastrian idea that righteousness, not birth, defines worth. It is during this time that the royal fire becomes a symbol not only of religion, but of empire itself. The flame represents Ahura Mazda's blessing upon the king's reign, the divine light that must be protected against corruption. When wars come, as they always do, soldiers carry this sacred fire before them as a token of courage and divine favor. You can see it flickering upon the battlefield, reflecting in their bronze helmets, the banner of the wise Lord blazing high. And yet amid this grandeur, the faith remains deeply personal. In humble homes far from the palaces of Persepolis, families still light small fires at dawn and dusk, whispering the ancient prayers of gratitude. They teach their children to speak truth to care, for the earth to live by good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. The empire may expand and conquer, but the moral flame that sustains it is tended quietly in the hearts of the people. When Xerxes ascends the throne, he too invokes Ahura Mazda's name, though the world around him grows more turbulent. His armies march westward against Greece, and though he is a mighty king, his campaign ends in defeat. Yet even in loss, the inscriptions he leaves behind speak not of divine abandonment, but of humility before the wise Lord. May Ahura Mazda protect my kingdom from the lie, he prays, echoing the eternal struggle between truth and falsehood that lies at the faith's core. You sense how deeply this vision shapes the Persian spirit. Victory and defeat are transient, but righteousness is eternal. Empires rise and fall, but the sacred order endures. The Zoroastrians of the Achaemenid world believe that Ahura Mazda's light never dims, only humanity's awareness of it falters. When a king rules justly, the world moves in harmony. When he strays, chaos spreads like smoke across the sky. Through the centuries of Achaemenid rule, the temples multiply, and the sacred fires are kept alive by generations of priests. From mountain sanctuaries in Media to coastal shrines near the Persian Gulf, the same flame burns a network of light across a vast empire. Travelers speak of the fire's constancy, glowing like a second sun through the night. In the royal court, the Magi advise the king, interpreting omens, maintaining rituals of purity, and guarding the wisdom of Zarathustra's teachings. And yet, for all its imperial splendor, the faith remains deeply human. It is not bound to gold or conquest, but to the quiet conviction that goodness is stronger than evil, that truth is worth more than power. It teaches kings and peasants alike that life is a test, a bridge to be crossed, a fire to be kept clean. You stand at the edge of Persepolis as twilight falls. The columns of the palace stretch upward like the trunks of an ancient forest. The air smells faintly of cedar and smoke. In the distance, a priest lights a torch, its flame trembling against the gathering dark. The light reflects upon the polished stone, and for a moment you see the same brilliance that once shone in Zarathustra's eyes, the eternal flame that binds empires and souls alike. As night covers the city, the fire burns on, small against the horizon, yet bright enough to hold back the dark. In it, the wisdom of the prophet and the majesty of kings meet and become one, the flame of truth, the kingdom of light, Persepolis and the sacred order of kings. The morning sun rises over the city of Persepolis, and its golden light spills across columns carved with lions, eagles, and kings. The air hums faintly with wind and prayer. You walk slowly through the royal terraces where the walls are alive with images of unity, men from distant lands carrying gifts for the Persian king, each figure sculpted with care and dignity. There is no chaos in their motion, only harmony. In this city, everything from the design of the gardens to the language of the inscriptions reflects a vision larger than empire. It is the Zoroastrian idea of cosmic order, Asha expressed in stone. The city itself seems to breathe this philosophy. Its stairways rise in measured balance, its halls unfold in perfect symmetry, as though built upon divine geometry. Every beam and carving mirrors the harmony between heaven and earth, between the human and the divine. To walk through Persepolis is to move through a world made sacred by discipline and purpose, the material echo of Ahura Mazda's truth. You imagine the Achaemenid kings wrapped in robes of white linen, walking through these very halls with calm authority. They are not gods nor claim to be. They are servants of the divine order, chosen by Ahura Mazda to guard righteousness and maintain balance in the world. On their seals and monuments, the name of the wise Lord appears again and again. By the will of Ahura Mazda, I am king. In this simple declaration lies the foundation of their legitimacy. Power to them is not self-made. It is granted by truth itself. When Darius the Great ruled, he spoke of kingship not as conquest but as moral duty. To rule unjustly, he said, was to side with the lie. In his inscriptions he warns future rulers, O man who shall be king hereafter, protect yourself from the lie. Punish the man who deceives. If you think what is right and do what is right, Ahura Mazda, will bless you. His words are as much sermon as proclamation, a reminder that the moral universe Zarathustra described applies even to kings. You can almost see Darius seated upon his throne, calm and composed, while priests in white stand behind him, tending a flame that burns steadily at his side. His crown gleams, but his gaze is steady, more contemplative than proud. For him the fire is not a symbol of power, but a mirror of responsibility. To dim that fire through injustice would be to darken the world itself. Beyond the palace walls the empire thrives. Egypt, Babylon, Lydia Media, all bound beneath the Persian sun. Yet its strength is not in uniformity but in tolerance. The Zoroastrian idea of respect for creation extends to respect for peoples and their gods. Temples are restored, local customs preserved. The Persian ruler does not demand conversion but harmony. To him order is not control, it is coexistence. In this you sense the quiet influence of Zarathustra's vision that goodness is not spread by force but by example. Within the royal complex stands a smaller sanctuary, a fire temple reserved for the king's own worship. Here the flames are tended by the Magi, whose chants rise softly with the dawn. Their rituals are exact, their discipline absolute. They guard not only the sacred fire but the purity of royal conscience. Each morning the priests recite prayers that affirm the cosmic balance. Let truth increase. Let falsehood be cast down. Let the fire of righteousness burn bright within the hearts of kings. You walk through the echoing halls and see the reliefs that line the stairways: lions, battling bulls, the eternal symbol of renewal, light triumphing over darkness. Each image tells the same story in another form, that life is a constant struggle, but one guided by the certainty that good will prevail. Even the smallest ornament speaks the same language, the curling vines, the symmetrical flowers, all repeating the rhythm of Asha, the pattern of perfection. The people of the empire look to Persepolis not only as a capital, but as a reflection of heaven. It is said that during the Nowruz festival, the Persian New Year, emissaries from every province gather before the king. The scene is magnificent, gold and silk glimmering in the morning light, the smell of incense drifting through the air. The king, seated upon a marble throne beneath a canopy of carved cedar, accepts their offerings not as tribute to himself, but as homage to the order he embodies. The ceremony begins with prayer and ends in feasting, symbolizing the renewal of creation, a mirror of Ahura Mazda's eternal cycle of light and life. You can feel the awe that must have filled those gatherings, the unity of so many nations under one moral vision. It is not a peace of silence or fear, but a harmony of shared purpose. The empire, vast and diverse, becomes a single tapestry woven from the thread of truth.
And yet you know that no order lasts forever. After the reigns of Darius and Xerxes, time begins to erode the perfection they built. The fires continue to burn, but shadows gather at the edges of the empire. Intrigue seeps into the court. The Magi grow powerful, and the purity of faith becomes tangled in the politics of men. By the time Artaxerxes takes the throne, the empire's borders tremble, and whispers of rebellion echo in distant provinces. The eternal fire still burns in the temples, but the clarity of purpose begins to waver. Still, the memory of Zoroastrian order remains strong. Even in decline, Persian kings continue to speak of Ahura Mazda's will, invoking truth and justice as their guiding lights. They believe that as long as the sacred fire burns, their legitimacy endures. The flame becomes both symbol and burden, a constant reminder that kingship without righteousness is an empty crown. You leave the city walls as twilight descends.
The sun sets behind the Zagros mountains and the sky turns violet and gold. The ruins of Persepolis stand silent now, but in your mind's eye the fire still glows, its reflection dancing on the polished floors, its light flickering in the eyes of kings long gone. The sacred order of kings was never merely a system of rule. It was a reflection of something greater, the belief that power and morality are inseparable, that the light of heaven must shine through the deeds of those who govern. It was a vision born from a prophet's flame and carried by emperors who sought to mirror the divine in the fragile realm of men. As darkness deepens over the plain, you can almost hear the faint echo of the ancient prayer that once rose from these halls. May the kingdom of truth never fade. May the fire of righteousness never die. May Ahura Mazda watch over us all. And with those words, the city of light sinks gently into memory, not extinguished, but glowing quietly in the heart of time. The Sassanids and the final flame. The centuries pass like drifting sand. The Achaemenid Empire falls to Alexander's armies, and the sacred fire of Persia flickers beneath foreign rule. The Macedonians bring their gods and their marble, and though they conquer the land, they cannot extinguish the light entirely. Through the long twilight that follows through the rise of the Parthians and the fading memory of the old kings, the priests of Ahura Mazda continue to guard the fire in hidden sanctuaries. They whisper the hymns of Zarathustra over small flames burning in earthen bowls, waiting for a time when Persia will once again be ruled by those who honor the wise Lord. That time comes at last, centuries later, with the rise of the Sassanid dynasty, the final great Zoroastrian empire. It begins in the 3rd century CE, when Ardashir, a nobleman of Persia's southern lands, raises his banner against the Parthian kings. His armies march beneath the symbol of the Fravashi, the winged soul of light, and when he triumphs, he does not claim the throne merely as conqueror. He declares that his victory is sanctioned by Ahura Mazda himself, and the flame of Zoroastrianism once more becomes the fire of an empire. You imagine Ardashir kneeling before the sacred flame in the city of Istakhar, his face illuminated by the soft glow. The air trembles with the sound of prayer. In that moment, a covenant is renewed between king and divinity, between empire and eternal truth. By the will of Ahura Mazda, he proclaims, "I am King of Kings." With those words, the ancient bond between heaven and throne, between faith and rule, is rekindled. Under the Sassanids, Zoroastrianism flourishes as never before. Temples of fire rise across the land from the high plains of Media to the deserts of Fars. The priests, now organized into a powerful hierarchy, oversee rituals of purity and doctrine. The empire itself becomes a mirror of the cosmic order, the king at its center reflecting Ahura Mazda, the nobles and magi beneath him representing the Amesha Spentas, and the people forming the body of creation bound together by duty and devotion. The most sacred fire of all burns in Adur Farnbag, the Temple of Glory, said to have been kindled by Zarathustra himself. Pilgrims journey for months to reach it, their faces wind-worn and hopeful. When they arrive, they do not enter the inner sanctum, only the priests may tend the flame, but even standing outside they feel its warmth, its hum of divinity. The fire never sleeps, fed with dry wood, kept pure from the touch of impurity. It becomes the living heart of the empire. Under Shapur, Suardashir's son Persia expands, defeating the Romans and establishing itself as the dominant power of the East. Yet Shapur is more than a warrior. He is a philosopher king. He invites scholars, astronomers, and physicians to his court. Among them are sages from India, Greece, and even distant lands of the Mediterranean. His reign becomes a golden age of learning and light. Still at its center burns the sacred fire, the symbol of Ahura Mazda's favor. You walk through the streets of Ctesiphon, the imperial capital, where the domes of fire temples rise above the rooftops like glowing suns. The faithful move quietly through the streets at dusk, carrying lamps homeward. From every doorway flickers a small flame, mirroring the Eternal One in the temple. In those lights, the city seems alive with faith, a constellation of devotion shimmering against the darkness. Zoroastrianism during this era becomes not merely a religion, but a system of law and ethics. The Avesta is gathered and written down, more fully preserving ancient hymns that had lived only in memory. The Magi, now powerful advisors to kings, ensure that every aspect of life, marriage, trade, justice, governance aligns with Asha, the principle of divine truth. Fire becomes the empire's constant witness. Contracts are sworn beside it, judgments rendered in its glow. To lie before the flame is to lie before the universe itself. And yet, as the empire grows stronger, it also grows rigid. The purity laws become stricter, the priesthood more controlling. Those of other faiths, Jews, Christians, Manichaeans, find themselves watched with suspicion. For the first time in its long history, Zoroastrianism begins to wield its flame not only as a light, but as a sword. The faith that once welcomed moral choice above all else begins to guard its boundaries with fire. Still among the people, the old gentleness endures. Farmers bless their fields in Ahura Mazda's name. Mothers whisper prayers to the Fravashis as they rock their children to sleep. Even the humblest shepherd, watching his flock beneath the stars, feels the presence of the wise Lord in the quiet breath of the earth. The faith remains alive in the rhythm of daily life, in the water poured, the bread baked, the fire tended before dawn. The Sassanid kings see themselves not as masters of the world, but as stewards of its light. The greatest among them, Khosrow-Anushirvan, rules with justice so profound that even centuries later his name is remembered as Khosrow the Just. He reforms the laws, protects scholars, and declares that truth, not birth, grants honor. The fire of the mind, he says, burns brighter than the crown. Under his rule, Persia becomes a realm where reason and faith walk hand in hand. But no flame, however bright, escapes the winds of history. In the 7th century, the armies of Arabia rise, carrying a new revelation Islam, and sweep across the deserts toward Persia. The Sassanid Empire, weakened by years of war and internal strife, cannot withstand the tide. City by city, the sacred fires are extinguished, temples fall silent, the priests, once mighty, flee to the mountains or across the sea. You imagine one of them standing upon a high hill, watching as his temple burns below. The sky glows red, but he does not weep. He takes a small ember from the dying fire, wraps it in cloth, and carries it with him into exile. Across the mountains, across the ocean, he and his people journey until they find refuge in the land of India. There the exiles will kindle their flame anew, calling themselves the Parsis, the Persians, the last keepers of Zarathustra's light. And though the empire crumbles, the faith endures. The Sassanid kings vanish into memory, their palaces into dust, but the sacred fire lives on in a handful of temples, in the whispered prayers of families, in the hope that goodness cannot die. For as long as even one lamp burns in honor of Ahura Mazda, the chain between heaven and earth remains unbroken. You look eastward where the horizon glows faintly before dawn. The darkness seems vast, but in the distance a single flame still flickers, a survivor of centuries, a spark of the eternal fire. It trembles, but it does not fade. The final empire of Zoroastrianism has fallen, but the faith itself, the quiet worship of light, truth, and choice, burns on steady and undying, the coming of Islam and the long twilight. The dawn of a new world rises over Persia, yet for those who guard the old fires, the light feels different, softer, cooler, uncertain. The 7th century brings a wind of change that sweeps across deserts and mountains, carrying with it a new revelation from the West. The banners of Islam gleam beneath the sun, and the soldiers of faith march eastward, reciting verses from the Quran. Their voices are calm, resolute, as they declare the unity of God. For the followers of Ahura Mazda, the message is familiar, yet it comes with a force that will alter their world forever. You stand upon a high hill overlooking the plains near Nahavand, where in 642 CE the armies of the Sassanid Empire meet the Arab conquerors. The air is thick with dust and cries. The banners of the Persians flutter in the wind, embroidered with the image of the Fravashi, the winged symbol of divine soul. But the flame of their empire, though still bright, is faltering. Years of endless war against Byzantium have weakened their strength, and within their borders corruption and fatigue have taken root. The battle ends in ruin. The army of Yazdegerd III, the last Sassanid king, is scattered. The cities of Persia open their gates one by one, not from betrayal, but from exhaustion. The ancient world of fire and truth bends before a new power, a new creed that speaks of submission to a single, all-powerful God, not unlike Ahura Mazda, yet different in its tone and law. For the Zoroastrians, the conquest is not only political, but spiritual. Their temples are seized or transformed. The sacred flames tended for centuries are extinguished in many places. The Magi, once advisors to kings, become wanderers, their white robes dusty and torn. Some remain in secret, keeping their rituals alive in hidden valleys and mountain shrines. Others, unwilling to see their faith fade, flee across the sea to India, carrying with them the embers of their divine fire, wrapped in bronze urns. You imagine such a voyage, the ships creaking upon the dark waters, the refugees watching as the coastline of their beloved Persia disappears beneath the horizon. They are weary, but steadfast. In their hearts they carry the words of Zarathustra, "The flame may waver, but it shall never die." Among them are priests, families, and children who will become the Parsis, the Persians, who will keep the old faith alive in a foreign land. Those who remain in Iran live cautiously, adapting to the new order. The caliphs of Islam, recognizing the ancient dignity of the Persian people, grant them a measure of protection as people of the book. They pay a tax, but are allowed to worship, though their temples grow few. In the great cities, Shiraz, Yazd, and Kerman, small communities endure. In each, a single flame continues to burn. You walk through one of those temples centuries later. Its walls are plain, its chambers modest, but in the center burns a flame as bright as any that once blazed in Persepolis. An old priest tends it, his hands steady though his eyes are dim with age. Around him the faithful gather, men, women, and children, their voices rising softly in prayer. The words are ancient, yet the sound is tender like a lullaby sung to a sleeping world. They pray for renewal, for the triumph of truth, for the final victory of light. For centuries after the conquest, the Zoroastrians endure quietly like the coals beneath ash. They live simply avoiding conflict, holding their festivals in secrecy. During Nowruz, the Persian New Year, they still light their fires at sunrise and leap over them singing blessings for health and happiness. They still honor the waters, the earth, the sky, gifts of Ahura Mazda. The purity laws remain, though adapted to their reduced life. And above all, they keep alive the sacred triad: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. In time, Persia itself transforms. The Persian tongue survives interwoven with Arabic, and the culture of the old empire seeps into the veins of the new. The poetry of Ferdowsi centuries later will sing of the lost grandeur of the fire worshippers and the noble spirit of their kings. In his Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, the ancient Zoroastrian heroes live again Rustam Zal and the wise kings who ruled by the light of Asha. Through poetry and memory, the faith that once ruled an empire becomes the soul of a nation. You sense how the old and new begin to blend. Islam brings new laws and new prayers, but the spirit of Persian thought, the reverence for light, the love of truth. The battle between good and evil lingers beneath its surface. The Zoroastrian sense of cosmic morality infuses the Persian world so deeply that even those who no longer tend the flame still feel its warmth. Still, for the faithful who refuse to let go, the centuries are hard. They are mocked as outsiders, their temples hidden behind high walls. Many convert, some by choice, others by necessity. Yet the stubborn flame persists in places like Yazd and Kerman, where the desert winds cannot reach it. The faithful whisper their prayers in Avestan, an ancient tongue no longer spoken, but never forgotten. Each dawn they face the sun, raise their hands and offer gratitude for light. You watch as generations pass, fathers teaching sons, mothers whispering to daughters the stories of Ahura Mazda and the prophet Zarathustra, passed from heart to heart. The great empires rise and fall around them, the caliphates, the Mongols, the Timurids. Through it all, the Zoroastrians remain like the stubborn root of a tree that refuses to die even after the forest has burned. By the late Middle Ages, travelers from distant lands begin to record tales of them, the fire worshippers of Persia. Some misunderstand their ways, thinking they bow to the flame itself, but a few see deeper, recognizing the fire for what it truly is, a symbol of divine truth. Marco Polo, passing through Yazd, writes of a people who keep their ancient customs, guarding a flame said to have burned since before the time of Alexander. And indeed it is true. Even after 1,000 years of twilight, the fire has not gone out. In the heart of the temple at Yazd it still burns, fed by a lineage of priests whose names stretch back into myth. Through invasions, droughts and empires, the flame endures. You stand there now in imagination, watching its glow dance against the clay walls. The priest adds a small log of dry wood, murmuring the words that have echoed for millennia, "As the wise Lord wills, so let it be." Outside, the desert night is cold, the stars distant and silent. But within these walls, warmth lingers, a fragile, persistent hope that refuses to be forgotten. The coming of Islam changed Persia forever. Yet in its shadow, Zoroastrianism found a quieter strength, not of empire or conquest, but of endurance. The faith of fire learned to live in silence, its light, hidden but never extinguished. You look once more at the flickering flame steady in its small copper urn, and feel what generations have felt before you, that truth may fade, but it cannot vanish. Empires crumble, languages change, yet the soul's longing for light remains. Outside dawn gathers once more on the horizon. The long night begins to break, the Parsis and the journey to India. The sea stretches before you, vast, shimmering, and full of promise. Along its edge, a small fleet of wooden ships bobs gently in the early morning tide. Upon them stand men and women, draped in white, their faces turned toward the rising sun. They are weary from travel eyes, shadowed with grief. Yet in their arms they cradle something precious, a bronze vessel within which burns a small, quivering flame. It is the sacred fire of Ahura Mazda, the last remnant of a fallen empire, and with it they will carry their faith into exile. These are the Parsis, the Persians, leaving their homeland forever to preserve their light. The story begins in the years following the fall of the Sassanid Empire. Across Persia, temples have gone dark. The priests wander in secret, their chants fading beneath the call to prayer that now fills the cities. The Zoroastrians who remain face increasing hardship taxes that drain their strength, laws that isolate them, a slow erosion of freedom. And so in small groups, families begin to leave. Some travel north into the mountains, others east toward the sea. Among them are priests carrying embers taken from the ancient temple's fire that has burned, they say, since the time of Zarathustra himself. You can imagine the night of departure. The desert wind sighs through the reeds as they board their ships. Behind them, Persia glows faintly beneath the stars, a homeland they will never see again. The captain raises his hand in silence, and the sails fill with wind. As the coastline drifts away, the people kneel beside their flame, shielding it from the sea breeze. In the darkness it flickers, but does not die. Their journey has begun a voyage of faith that will carry them across centuries. After weeks upon the water, the ships make landfall on the western shores of India at a place that will later be known as Sanjan in the region of Gujarat. The people disembark quietly, kneeling to touch the unfamiliar earth. They thank Ahura Mazda for guiding them safely across the sea. The local ruler, a wise Hindu prince named Jadirana, watches their arrival with curiosity. Strangers have come to his land, pale from travel, their language strange, their garments simple, and yet their eyes burn with a steady dignity. Legend tells that when the prince asks who they are, their high priest replies not in words but with a gesture. He asks for a cup of milk filled to the brim, and then stirs into it a spoonful of sugar. As the sugar dissolves into the milk without displacing it, he says softly, "So will we blend into your kingdom, sweetening it, but never overflowing it." The prince smiles at this wisdom and grants them refuge. Thus begins the long chapter of the Parsis, the keepers of the old light in a new world. In the centuries that follow, they build their first temple in India, a sanctuary for the sacred fire they carried from Persia. They name it the Atash Behram of Sanjan, the fire of victory. The priests kindle it with ceremony, feeding it with wood purified through prayer. As the flame leaps upward, The gathered exiles bow their heads in tears and relief. For the first time since their flight, the light burns freely again, no longer hidden, no longer in fear. In its glow they see both loss and rebirth. You walk among them, hearing their hymns rise in the night, the same verses once sung in the courts of Persepolis now echoing beneath Indian skies. Their faith endures though far from home. They work the land trade with nearby villages and learn the local tongue. True to their word, they live in peace with their neighbors, known for their honesty and diligence. They build communities that prosper quietly, their temples becoming centers of warmth and charity. In time, as the centuries unfold, the Parsis flourish. They build new fire temples in Navsari Surat, and later in Bombay, each one a home for the eternal flame. The fire they brought from Persia becomes the spiritual heart of their community, tended day and night, never extinguished. Generations of priests dedicate their lives to its care, reciting the Atash Niayesh, the fire hymn, as they feed it with fragrant wood. In its glow they feel the presence of Ahura Mazda, the same divine light that guided their ancestors across the sea. You can almost see a small Parsi village at twilight, white-walled homes, their doorways lit with small lamps. Children play in the courtyards while elders sit nearby telling stories of ancient Persia, of Cyrus the Great, of Darius, of Zarathustra's teachings. When night falls, families gather before their hearth, joining their voices in prayer. May good thoughts, good words, and good deeds guide us. May the light of truth never fade. The Parsi become known for their integrity and enterprise. Over time, they play a crucial role in the growth of India's great cities, especially Bombay, where they become merchants, scholars, and patrons of education and art. Their influence spreads far beyond their numbers, and yet they never forget the fire they carried across the sea. Even as the modern world rises around them, railways, telegraphs, tall buildings, the ancient flame continues to burn its guardians, unchanged in devotion. But theirs is not a story only of endurance. It is also a story of gratitude. The Parsis never forget the kindness of those who gave them refuge. They build schools and hospitals open to all, regardless of faith. They contribute to the arts and sciences, becoming bridges between East and West. They are small in number, but their legacy becomes vast, the sweetness of the sugar they once promised to bring. Still in quiet moments, the Parsis look westward. During their festivals, Nowruz, the New Year, Merigan, the Feast of Mithra, Farvardigan, the remembrance of the dead, they face the setting sun toward the lost homeland of Iran. They speak the old prayers in Avestan, their voices filled with longing for the mountains and deserts their ancestors left behind. In those moments, the sea between India and Persia seems to shimmer like a mirror of fire linking past and present. You imagine a festival night in Bombay. The city hums with life, but in one quiet quarter, the air glows golden. Within a fire temple, the priests stand before the sacred flame, their white robes gleaming. The youngest among them adds a log to the fire, whispering a prayer for strength, for peace, for remembrance. The elders bow their voices, uniting in harmony. The flame burns bright, reflected in their eyes, the same fire that once burned in Persepolis, carried across oceans, preserved through exile. Outside, the stars shimmer over the Indian Ocean, their light falling upon temples and ships upon lands once divided by time. You feel the same truth that the Parsis carried with them that the flame of faith does not belong to a place but to the heart that tends it. And so across continents and centuries, the religion of fire lives on humble, enduring luminous. Its empire has long faded, but its light remains. The Parsis are no longer kings of nations, but keepers of eternity. As dawn approaches, the wind from the sea stirs the temple's flame, and it flutters like a living soul. You watch its reflection dance across the copper walls and feel that ancient warmth once more, the promise that goodness, even in exile, can still burn bright. The fire of Persia, now the fire of India, glows steadily against the coming day, the eternal struggle of light and darkness. The night is still the world asleep beneath the wide sky. You sit before a quiet flame, its glow soft, steady, and alive. It has burned through empires and exiles, through triumph and ruin. In its golden heart, you see the story of humanity itself, the yearning for meaning, the battle for goodness, the eternal dance between shadow and light. It is here in this humble fire that the spirit of Zoroastrianism lives unchanged since the time of Zarathustra, still whispering the truth that once echoed across the mountains of ancient Persia. You close your eyes, and the centuries fade. The voice of the prophet returns, calm and luminous, carried upon the breath of the wind. There is but one path, the path of Asha, the path of truth. Choose it with good thoughts, speak it with good words, live it through good deeds. These are not merely moral commands, they are the architecture of the cosmos itself. In Zarathustra's vision, every choice ripples outward, shaping the universe, tipping the scales between creation and corruption. And so the story of Zoroastrianism is more than the tale of one people or one age. It is the reflection of an eternal principle that life is sacred, that conscience is divine, and that each soul is a battlefield where Ahura Mazda and Ahriman meet. Every human heart carries a spark of both light and darkness intertwined. What makes existence meaningful is not to avoid that struggle, but to engage in it, to awaken, to choose, to fight gently but unceasingly for the light. In the ancient texts, the end of all things is not described as destruction, but as renewal, the frashokereti, the making fresh of the world. You can almost see it, the mountains dissolving in rivers of molten metal, the sea turned to silver fire. The righteous pass through this burning flood as though through warm milk, but for the wicked it sears away the last remnants of falsehood. And when the fire cools, all creation stands purified. Death is defeated. Even Ahriman, the spirit of the lie, is transformed, not annihilated, but redeemed. The universe is whole again, shining with the light of the wise Lord. It is a vision of astonishing mercy that even the darkest shadow can in the end be reclaimed by the dawn. Zoroastrianism does not end in despair, but in hope. The final victory is not won by violence or fear, but by the steady triumph of goodness. The war between light and dark is fierce, but it is also destined that light will prevail, because light in its essence is truth, and truth cannot die. You think of the ages that have passed since Zarathustra first spoke his revelation, the rise of Persia, the building of Persepolis, the long twilight of conquest, the journey of the Parsis across the sea. Empires have come and gone, yet his voice remains woven through the faiths and philosophies of the world. The ideas born in that distant plateau of heaven and hell, of angels and demons, of resurrection and final judgment, have flowed into Judaism, Christianity, Islam, The ancient fire has cast its light across civilizations, its reflection shimmering in the prayers of countless generations. And yet beyond influence and theology, the heart of this faith remains simple. It asks no endless rituals, no grand temples. It asks only awareness that every thought, word, and deed matters, that truth must be guarded, that purity of mind and respect for creation are the truest forms of worship. It is a religion of mindfulness, long before the word existed, a call to live with clarity and kindness in a world shadowed by chaos. In the quiet villages of Iran, where the desert meets the mountains, small communities of Zoroastrians still rise before dawn to greet the sun. They face the light with open palms, whispering the ancient prayers, "May the fire of Asha burn within me. May I bring truth into the world." In India, in the cities of Mumbai and Navsari, the Parsis still tend their temples, the flames still alive, behind glass sanctuaries. They walk softly, speak honestly, work diligently, a dwindling people yet radiant with dignity. Each time they feed the sacred fire, they keep a promise made thousands of years ago to never let the light go out. You imagine visiting one such temple. The air smells of sandalwood. The flame trembles faintly behind its silver grate. The priest stands motionless, lips moving in prayer. Outside the city hums cars, voices electricity, the modern world rushing past. Yet within this quiet chamber, time itself feels slow and sacred. The fire is not ancient, it is eternal. It belongs not to the past, but to the unbroken present. You realize then that the story of Zoroastrianism is not one of relics, but of endurance, of how faith can survive when all else fades. You lift your gaze to the flame and see in it everything that has come before: the courage of the prophets, the wisdom of kings, the resilience of exiles. The same light that guided Cyrus and Darius now glows in a single spark. It is the same fire that burned in Persepolis, that crossed the Indian Ocean with the Parsis, that flickered secretly through centuries of oppression. Every heartbeat, every human act of truth or compassion adds another breath to its flame. The world beyond the temple is vast and uncertain, full of noise and shadow. Yet within every heart the same ancient battle endures. The question is the same one Zarathustra once asked: beneath the stars, will you serve the light or the lie? Will you guard the sacred fire within you or let it fade? Each person must answer, and each answer changes the world a little more. Outside, the first light of dawn begins to rise. The sky blushes pale gold. The priest opens the temple doors and sunlight spills across the flame. For a brief, dazzling moment, the two fires, earthly and celestial, meet. The room fills with radiance, and you feel as though Ahura Mazda himself breathes through the wind. In that merging of fires you understand. The ancient religion of Zoroastrianism is not a memory, but a mirror. It reflects the divine truth that lies within every soul, that goodness must be chosen, that light must be tended, that even in darkness hope endures. You step out into the morning, the scent of ash and incense still clinging to your breath. The world glows with quiet wonder, the same world the prophet once walked, the same sky beneath which empires rose and fell. The sacred fire burns behind you and within you. You carry its warmth as you go. And as the sun climbs higher, flooding the horizon with gold, the story of light and darkness continues not in temples or palaces, but in every choice, every word, every act of truth. The battle never ends, and neither does the light.